So I've been thinking about making this video for a while, and it's basically talking about when you should forgive someone, or in particular YouTube personalities who suddenly shift their politics. Now, I'm not saying these people are asking for forgiveness, because I'm sure if you ask them, they would say they aren't asking for forgiveness, they've just evolved, they've changed their mind. But this video is going to be talking about whether you should accept them as being genuine and whether you can ally with them on different causes. So I'm going to show two YouTubers who have changed significantly, and I'm going to compare one who seems very, very genuine and another who seems full of garbage. So the first one I'm going to focus on is Shoe0nHead, who's a social commentary YouTuber who has seemingly shifted from a more centrist, centre-right position to a more left-leaning position. Put it out there, me and her interacted on Twitter. I actually asked her about this and she responded. And I was sympathetic to her evolution because I saw a lot of people giving her shit online saying you can't trust her. And her argument essentially was, you know, as I've gotten older, I've become more educated on these topics and I've changed my politics. But I'll save that for a bit later. So to start with, let's get into what her previous views were. Now, if you guys have watched my series about the toxic politics of gaming, you will probably recognise a lot of the arguments she used to use. And in particular, if you go back and watch the video I made about the Act Man, where he had a video about diversity and feminism in video games, it's very, very similar to those types of arguments. So I'm just going to show you various clips, and what I'm not going to do is start rebutting them or anything, because that seems pretty pointless when someone has significantly changed. But what I am going to do is also read some Reddit posts I found on BreadTube where people talk about going down, you know, this skeptic rabbit hole until they essentially nearly became part of the alt-right, just to show how this sort of rhetoric is still pretty damaging.
So why is Gamergate so important to me? Seeing good friends of mine get labeled as misogynist, sexist, racist, only for enjoying video games and seeing through this very obvious agenda pushing 100% fuck no. Not even mad, I'm actually like impressed that these people have the ability. They're like champions of mental gymnastics of the oppression Olympics. The media shoehorning in diverse characters of different races, different genders and sexualities, or changing already established characters to a different race or a different gender or a different sexuality. There could be a fucking black, Mexican, Chinese, demisexual, lesbian, feminist otherkin in a wheelchair with no legs and shit, and these crybabies would still not be happy. I've never seen or heard one guy be like, that guy is too ripped and too attractive. I do not want to play this game. Give us characters that people can relate to other than just their skin tone, race, or sexuality. Every show and every movie and every video game, every piece of media has to have a black, brown, fat, disabled, trans, gay dragon.
So you get the gist of most of those videos. It's pretty standard and anti-SJW fare. Basically, SJWs will never be happy. They have an agenda to put diversity in your video games, in your films, in your television. You can't appease them, they're just so ridiculous, they will never be happy, so we gotta put diversity where it makes sense. Of course, like I said, you hear the exact same arguments with people like the Act Man, the Quartering, and to an extent Angry Joe as well. So obviously not on purpose, but a lot of people who watched YouTubers like Shoe0nHead in the past, combined with other ones, did eventually fall down this rabbit hole, and I actually found some good posts on BreadTube, like I said, which describe it, so I'm going to read parts of it for you now just to show how this sort of thing is damaging the past. So one called Trying to Work Out How I Fell for the Alt-Right. Someone writes, it started innocently through YouTube videos about atheism. I built a bond with various personalities who echoed my own opinions and helped make me feel extra smart and edgy free thinker. But discussing religion was getting boring. They sensed this and things moved seamlessly onto feminism. The whole movement was presented like a new religion or a cult to take on. Women just seemed like they wanted it better than men. After all, the patriarchy was made up, just like the pay gap. Something else Shoe0nHead actually made a video about. Women just enjoyed playing the victim and creating things to get upset about. But where else to go next but race, except it wasn't framed like that, was it? Just like I never wanted to be thought of as a sexist, I certainly didn't want to be a racist. No, this was all about a movement, Black Lives Matter, and actually Shoe0nHead's boyfriend, Armored Skeptic, made a video talking about this sort of stuff as well, so you see how it becomes problematic. Just like the feminists, they were all a bunch of radicals rebelling for the sake of rebelling. White privilege was their made-up talking point, and all they did was riot because all I saw day in, day out was cherry-picked clips of disobedience. These clips were cool because it exposed how biased CNN was for not showing the truth. So this guy falls down the alt-right rabbit hole and he says, but generally I just had an odd feeling in my stomach one day. what if I was on the wrong side of history? And then came the decision to look up videos by former anti-SJWs. This, coupled by the new direction of Cult of Dusty, led me to now. I'm still angry, but at least I feel like I'm angry about the right things. I dread to think how I'd be made to dismiss recent tragic events if I was still on the other side. So that's my story. I'm still trying to come to terms with it all. Off the top of my head, these were the major players on my YouTube feed: Shoe0nHead, Ruben Report, Blair White, who collaborated with Shoe0nHead, Armored Skeptic, who is Shoe0nHead's boyfriend, Shoe0nHead, and Chris Raygun. I could go on, but the main takeaway is hearing the same statements over and over really can make them seem true. So here's another post: thanks to BreadTube content creators and their communities for saving me. So I started out watching atheist videos when I was 11 or so with The Amazing Atheist. He was an atheist who owned Christians and I was 11, so of course when I found his videos talking about how dumb feminism was, I blindly agreed. As years went on, I stopped watching him but started watching others: Armored Skeptic, Shoe0nHead, Chris Raygun, all people who told me I was left-wing and I was morally justified, and all these stupid SJWs are regressive. I vividly remember thinking Gamergate was about ethics and games journalism, Anita Sarkeesian being a crazy cunt who lies all the time, PewDiePie being a totally cool innocent guy who the media was trying to destroy, Islamophobia being bullshit because Islam is evil, Ben Shapiro being a pretty smart dude. And then it goes on to say that he credits H-Bomber Guy's videos on things like Sherlock and Big Joel and ContraPoints for really getting him out of this rabbit hole. So there's other posts there, but you get the point. It's funny that they list the same people every time: Chris Raygun, Armored Skeptic, Shoe0nHead, and people like Shoe0nHead and Ruben Report. People who frame themselves as liberals pushing back against radical SJWs, but in my mind seems more like alt-centrists. Now, a lot of them aren't necessarily awful people, but a lot of their politics are super questionable and do obviously play a role in the YouTube pipeline to the alt-right. Now again, most of these people, apart from Shoe0nHead, I'd say, didn't knowingly do this, and they were just making YouTube content about stuff they thought was ridiculous. So I'm a bit more sympathetic to people like this when they change their mind. So this leads me to my own interaction with Shoe0nHead, and like I said, we now follow each other on Twitter. So I just tweeted out when I saw this drama about people on the left saying don't trust Shoe0nHead or Chris Raygun for their recent pro-left stances on a lot of things. So I tweeted out, so from a distance, Shoe0nHead and Chris Raygun are two anti-SJWs who had a change of heart and are now trying to pass off as leftists or something. And she replied, if you call being in your early 20s, I think she's 29 now, and linear time occurring, so now you're in your late 20s, a change of heart, then sure, otherwise no, liberal to liberal isn't a crazy transition in 6 years. And I said, honestly, I only just become aware of your channel / controversy from you getting dogpiled by a bunch of people I follow, so I was just curious what all the drama was around you and Raygun. I get it, people can change. I voted Tory, which is Conservatives in the UK, when I was 19, basically Marxist at 24, and she replied, word, people are just noticing I agree with them on a few things because I'm talking about topics other than BuzzFeed, so they think it's a change of heart when really it's just me exploring deeper politics and finally reading a few books for the first time in my life. And now if you go on her Twitter feed, despite what she was saying to me, which made it seem like she hadn't really changed that much, she has changed significantly. She's more in line with most leftists. You know, she hates corporate Democrats, she hates Republicans. She does have some more centrist takes about stuff like culture in terms of the videos I showed you before, but by and large, if you thought she was a leftist and went on her profile, I doubt there's much to change your mind on that. And like she said to me, it's more of an evolution. And when you see her actually doing this and putting out more content that is more in line with, I guess, good social politics and politics that help with social progress, you have to believe that she has actually changed her stance. And when she's now being very consistent with her politics and what she believes, it is of course very easy to accept them and forgive them. For putting out content which I showed you can be pretty damaging to people, especially impressionable young men. And just because sometimes I make videos on people and then I don't expect them to watch it and they end up watching that. If Shoe0nHead is watching this, I'm not saying you are asking for forgiveness. I don't think you are asking for forgiveness, but I'm just making a general point about this. Because like I said, I became aware of you because people weren't forgiving you and were telling everyone to be super skeptical of you. So hey everyone, just to cut into this video I've made, something annoying has just happened, right? So I wasn't really aware of who Shoe0nHead was since I've only had an interaction with her this year. So in a vacuum, when I go on her channel and see what she's like now, I thought that was it. When I did a bit more research, which I probably should have done before I made the video, turns out she was actually friends with Lauren Southern. And some people also said that she might have been one to launch her career. And then I also saw a tweet from 2019 wishing her luck after she released her last documentary, which of course is really fucking racist. So I was just going to point out I'm aware of this. I think my point still stands generally, that I still feel one's political evolution is genuine, while the others isn't. But of course I thought I'd acknowledge it on the list of bad things one has done, because obviously Southern is a massive piece of shit. And if you were saying in 2019 you think she'd be a great mum, despite her doing loads of heinous crap, pushing loads of conspiracies that have inspired violence, obviously that is super problematic. And in light of that, I actually do understand the skepticism a bit more. I just wanted to point out while I feel one might be a bit more genuine than the other. A bit embarrassing on my part, yes, I should have done more research, I shouldn't have taken it at surface level, but I thought I'd put out the video anyway, and let me know what you guys think at the end. Now, Lauren Southern is a completely different case. Now, you might have seen recently, she's made her big comeback, where she is now positioning herself as more of a centrist. You know, I would still say an alt-centrist. But she is coming from a place of being on the far right. She is essentially a white nationalist, now trying to pass herself off as a centrist. Now, she made a massive video about it, but here are some clips from that video. Essentially, she is saying that the environment she used to work in and be a part of too toxic, and she wants to have a more reasonable discussion, and she wants to call out elements on both the radical left and the radical right, which she used to be a part of.
Which brings me to another point, and that is family was not the only reason I took a step back, although it was a main one. I had planned to take an extended break from the internet and media for a while anyways, just to get my head out of the fishbowl and observe with a sober view the world that I was a part of. And to be real with you guys, the world I was a part of, especially earlier on in my YouTube career, was a very unhealthy one. And I mean, to be fair, most of you have probably been on Twitter before, so pointing out the toxicity of political or even just internet culture in general is probably the least shocking thing you have heard this year. Wow, the internet is toxic and it's bad for you. Shocking revelation, Lauren. Seriously though, I do want to be clear, actually, that when I'm talking about this toxic culture, especially in politics, I am not talking about regular everyday conservatives or regular liberals. What I am talking about is the forever onliners, the people who have lost themselves to a character or entire personality composed of partisan talking points, the extremists who can no longer see the humanity in their political opponents or even just other groups based on race or gender, the leaders of all these movements that are fighting over the last shreds of a dwindling social talking point market, and the cults that have seemingly formed where everyone views themselves as the hero in the story, whilst anyone on the other side is irredeemable scum. This whole mess, this whole just disaster that I was a part of, it is something that I began realizing in people around me, and then I started to see within myself as well, that I was actively assisting in creating this culture of entertainment and hot take politics. So I really do hope some of you consider joining me on that mission. If you'd like, you can go and check out the links below this video and join me on Subscribestar, because I can't really be on Patreon, can I?
What she leaves out is that she was banned from Patreon because she directed a driver of a boat when she was in France to block the path of an NGO boat. Lauren Southern has also pushed and mainstreamed numerous conspiracy theories. Do you remember everyone was outraged about farmers in South Africa and talking about a genocide against white farmers? She was one of the architects behind that myth. She actually made a documentary about it. She's made videos and documentaries about multiculturalism. She was also meant to go on a speaking tour with Stefan Molyneux and has also worked with Richard Spencer in the past. And she's also talked about the Great Replacement, the conspiracy theory that there is a plot to replace white people around the world. She actually made a video about this back in 2017, and let's not forget the New Zealand mosque shooter actually based his own manifesto on this conspiracy theory. So what you see with someone like Lauren Southern is essentially a white nationalist who has spread numerous theories of hate and whipped up hate around the world, worked with some of the leading mainstream neo-Nazis and white nationalists at the moment, and has influenced lots of people to commit violent acts. Her extremist views have caused untold damage, radicalised loads of young people, especially white people, and really damaged politics in general. And of course, it goes without saying, her rhetoric, her views, her documentaries have also resulted in a loss of lives. And you see in her apology, it's not like she's realised how damaging she's been. It's essentially that she's realised the grift of being a white nationalist may not be profitable in the long term, especially when people are committing shootings against Muslims based on conspiracy theories you've been pushing for years, and when you've been banned off Patreon and other sites because they realise you are a hate monger, literally inspiring violence. So when you come back and position yourself as some sort of alt-centrist, or maybe I guess a more moderate conservative, we're not going to believe you or take you seriously because, one, you haven't apologised, you haven't said how wrong you were, you didn't describe some awful experience that led you to becoming a white nationalist. You essentially profited off white nationalism until you realised it was no longer viable as a revenue source. And of course this infuriated other white nationalists like Paul Joseph Watson, who went absolutely berserk at her over WhatsApp. But again, there is no place for someone like this in the political discourse. In my opinion, she should be facing repercussions for what she said. She should be banned off YouTube. When you can directly tie the conspiracy theories she's posted on YouTube to shootings, I don't think extremist white nationalists should be having a place on social media sites that are mainstream, because white nationalism, despite what people like Richard Spencer and David Duke said, where they just think it's about, you know, living separately, and we have to be separate to be peaceful, but white supremacy is an inherently violent ideology, and it's not surprising that conspiracy theories about white South African farmers, conspiracy theories about great replacement of white people, white genocide, the takeover of the world by Islam, results in people shooting up mosques. And when you're a white nationalist who runs in circles of literal Nazis as well, I'd find it hard to forgive you even if you explained thoroughly why you were so wrong and how much you regret it. When you're not even doing that, there is no way I'm going to take you seriously, believe you have changed, or any other things like that. I just think you're positioning yourself as a more moderate person so you can last in the political climate and you can continue to make money. And of course, if we take a step back and we compare Shoe0nHead in her anti-SJW days to Lauren Southern in her white nationalist days, there is no comparison. And I'm not saying there's a comparison, even though I have pointed to how Shoe0nHead's videos could be damaging to certain people. Obviously that does not compare to people like Lauren Southern, who actively promote white supremacy, who push these white supremacist conspiracy theories that become mainstream and inspire awful violence. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like and share the video, maybe subscribe. I'm trying to hit 10k by the end of the summer. We're on 9.4 I think, and I'm just super excited to hit another milestone. If you want to follow me on social media, Twitter is the main one, so @TheCavernacle on Twitter, but also on Facebook and Instagram. Reddit is another massive one for me, so r/TheCavernacle for my subreddit, u/TommyCahill1995 for my personal Reddit, and feel free to DM me on either Reddit or Twitter. If you want to check out my Patreon, the link is in the description. If you want to check out my WordPress, there is also a link in the description. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.